Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm sitting down with Hanna Barbera veteran and Jonny Quest superfan Lance Falk to chat about the original series. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that help support this podcast. Bill, Brent, Eight-Legged Bird, Jacob, Jordan, and Monique. Thank you all so much for your support. It truly means a lot. If you want to become a member of our Patreon channel to help support this show and get all these episodes early and ad-free, follow the link below and sign up today. Now, let's get on to that chat with Lance. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cartoon Chronicles Podcast. I'm your host, Julian. Today I'm joined by Lance. Lance, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. Good to be back.
Oh, it's glad to have you back. Like I told you before we hit record, man, we were doing a little bit of deep diving and some Scooby-Doo and some other things you worked on the last time you were on. But if I saw anybody eyes light up the way your eyes lit up when I asked you about Jonny Quest, man, I love to see it. I love seeing you guys that are fans of what you work on and what you grew up with, just like I'm fans of what you guys worked on and what I grew up with. So let's take it way back to 1965. Jonny Quest starts to premiere. What's your first introduction to Jonny Quest? Was it that pilot episode?
You know what? I was so little when I first saw it that I don't really have a good first connection with Jonny Quest.
Mhm.
It seemed like I always loved it. It was always there, and I always loved it. I was, three when it came out, three or four when
Mhm.
it came out, or when I saw it. So it was just kind of a thing that was always there. You go a little later, I really remember Star Trek premiering, and I
Mhm.
was eight. Like I remember the moon landing,
Yeah.
which almost happened at the same time. And yeah, it's crazy. I was three when Mary Poppins came out. It was the first movie I saw in a theater, and I actually remember the experience. I was so thrilled by it. Jonny Quest, like it's just always there in this real warm spot. I always loved it, knew I loved it, never got tired of it whenever I heard that theme music, bum, ba, bum, ba, it would just be a call to action. And I'd run in the room and watch it. It remains my favorite animated show of any kind. And I don't think, in a lot of ways, I don't think anybody's still touched it. But there are other great animated adventure shows. I think, largely, well, the other HB shows at the time were good, but
Mhm.
Jonny Quest was great. And it was a while before like Bruce Timm and Warner Brothers and those guys started really doing Batman the Animated Series and those things, where I was really like re-engaged.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there are a lot of people. It's an age thing, right? In the 80s, where there were a lot of, He-Man and G.I. Joe and Transformers and Ninja Turtles and those. And I'm like right at the age where I didn't like those shows because to me they were like toy commercials.
Mhm.
And I kind of they didn't connect with me. If I were younger, they would have for sure. And I would have been in that cult. But I just kind of missed being interested in those things and even understanding their popularity. So I'm glad, listen, I'm glad anytime there's somebody out there, people enjoy it. But I never got those shows. And here we are and I have friends that worked on those things. And I would have been happy to work on any of those. But here we are with Jonny. I don't think you can touch it. I just don't. In fact, I've been in animation almost 40 years, and the more I know, the better that show gets.
Yeah.
Uh, it does have some technical clunkiness here and there because of the
Mhm.
time it was made, but I still say in terms of like tone and story and music and the editing and the voice work and all those things, they're really hard to match. It feels so real to me. So.
Now, you said something I want to circle back to. You said the Hanna-Barbera shows, the other ones were good, but Jonny Quest was great. What set
Yeah.
this one apart for you? Why was this one great?
Well, because it was written at a higher level than, say, Space Ghost or Herculoids or a lot of those other shows that were cool as hell. But those shows didn't have really sophisticated stories. They were only 11 minutes long. and they were, the Herculoids are having a picnic, and a flying saucer lands,
Hmm.
and aliens come out and they fight him, and there's a big explosion at the end. Jonny Quest actually has stories with nuance and intelligence, and there's also something I really like about the fact that it's kind of in the real world, that it's real places. The characters are pretty realistic. They go to places you can find on a map. The technology, if it's a little science fictional, it's plausible,
Hmm.
because Doug Wildey was looking at popular science. And have nothing against total fantasy, like Space Ghosts and Herculoids are total fantasy. My other big, big, big love from my childhood is classic Star Trek. That's all fantasy.
Yeah.
But I would like say there's something about Jonny Quest. I felt more part of the action because it felt real, like you could step in and join those guys on a mission, not like you were gonna hang out with the Herculoids. But
Yeah.
it's really a matter of format. They
Hmm.
were like two 11s in a half hour or three 7s in a half hour. And Johnny was a full 22-minute show, so they had room to stretch their legs story wise.
That they did. And excuse me. Rewatching this one you bring up the intro, and it's such a distinct
Yeah.
sound. Like you hear it and you automatically, you said a call to action, I think is the term you use. You've got to get there and see what's going on. I mean, it's going back and watching this one and just popping the DVD in. I was blown away just the level of animation. Now, what I liked more about Johnny Quest, like you had said, the writing is phenomenal. What I love the most, like I love the most about all animation, is the backgrounds. The backgrounds are some of the prettiest backgrounds, especially during that era. This is going 60 years ago now. This is the 60th anniversary this year for Johnny Quest. And some of the backgrounds, especially in the episodes you picked, I wrote down a couple of them as far as the backgrounds and the actual scenes. It doesn't seem like a Hanna Barbera show when you look at the backgrounds. When you look at the characters, you're like, all right, I can see some of that Hanna Barbera, flair coming through. But the backgrounds were just so different than anything that I'd really seen if you pull anything from that era. Now, when you're watching this show as a kid, did anything stick out to you? Like you said, it seemed like it was rooted in the real world, but what was it about the mystique? Was it the characters that you liked? Was it the monsters that you liked? What was it about that you liked the most?
Well, again, a thing I keep falling back on is it seemed kind of real.
Hmm.
It seemed more real than any other show.
Yeah.
It was drawn more realistically, and the stories were more plausible, I guess. I mean, if you could take a lot of those episodes, and they're basically like thugs with guns or the bad
Yeah.
guys, place you've seen on a map. And let me see, the three I picked were Robot Spy, which is my personal favorite,
Hmm.
and Invisible Monster. They both have certainly a fantasy thing in them. And then Terror Island is full of mutated monsters and giant creatures and things, and kind of ends like a Godzilla movie in a way.
Yes.
So but I could have said Skull and Double Crossbones or Small Matter Pygmies or Mystery of the Lizard Men, which are straight up like that could have been an episode of Man from Uncle or something. So um, there is just something about, I don't think all shows should be realistic to
Hmm.
work, certainly, but what other adventure show is like that? Where it's so based in reality with a little element of fantasy to it. You know, like I'm curious if anybody else did anything like that. I mean, the Venture Brothers, but that's a parody of Johnny Quest, and I love it, by the way. I love that show.
It's a great
But
show.
yeah, and I got no problem with an affectionate parody of anything. If they're obviously showing up there with love for the real thing rather than trying to, you know, slag on it,
Hmm.
I'm all there.
Now it's a newer show, and it's only got like 6 episodes out right now. And you work at Adult Swim with on Rick and Morty now, but have you gotten a chance to see Common Side Effects yet?
Not yet, not yet. It's kind
Dude,
of list.
dude,
I've got
dude. I
like
know
most.
I know you're busy as shit.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is the greatest thing on TV right now. I mean, my wife does not enjoy animation whatsoever. You know, she'll watch it if I watch it. The only thing that I've gotten her to watch so far has been Bob's Burgers because we absolutely love Bob's Burgers, right?
Right.
That's a Mount Rushmore show for me right there. But I would just started watching this, and then it was one of those things where I turned it on. I watched the first episode by myself, heard all the hype, everybody was talking about it, and I was blown away. And it was that instant moment where like I can't watch this, but I have to share this with somebody. I have to. This is such appointment. I'm so glad it's not all out there right now on Netflix or anything like that where you can go and just binge all 10, 12, however many episodes they're going to do.
Right.
I love the week because it just builds that anticipation. If you want something that's rooted that could be real, this show is mwah, it is fucking perfection on the screen. So whenever you get the chance, man, check it out. It's fantastic. Um,
You know, did you watch, I'm really going off here. Did you watch Primal?
oh my God, I love Primal. I cannot wait for
Primal's
season
something.
three.
That's
Oh
something
man.
else. Yeah.
You know, we'll get back to Jonny Quest in just a second, but that first season, like Samurai, you can see Samurai Jack back there. Samurai Jack
Yeah.
is my favorite cartoon of all time. I mean, what
That's
they
great.
did, I could not appreciate, just like Jonny Quest, I could not appreciate this show and what it did as a kid, like I can now as an adult. Watching the animation, watching the story flush out, you know. But you go to Samurai Jack, and with Gendy in particular, you know, there's not a lot of dialogue whatsoever. So your focus is not like something you can watch on your phone. You can't be playing on your phone. You have to watch what's going on, you know. And Primal was that same way. There's not a single word uttered until the last 3 seconds of the first season of the last episode, and I'm just like, who does that in today's day and age? With when they say attention spans are all over the place, man, Gendy does it. That's who. Fantastic show, by the way. Primal. I'd put Common Side Effects up there with Primal, for sure. That first season, it's fantastic. But getting back to Jonny Quest, man. Now, with me, when you gave me these 3 episodes, we'll talk about those 3 episodes in just a second. I'm pretty sure. Let me make sure I got the name right. Yeah, the Invisible Monster. I'm almost 100% sure that was the first Johnny Quest episode I remember seeing. As soon as the monster, when they paint the monster, when he comes on the screen, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't thought about this episode in particular since I was a little guy. Um, you know, so I love the 3 episodes you picked, and we'll deep dive into those in just a moment. But you said something at the beginning of this that you know more about that stuff, or you know more about that show. You know, now as an adult, you know, working in the industry and everything like that. What were some of the things you might have been surprised to find out, whether it was like maybe a writing room or the artist room, or what's something that you think most fans might not know about Johnny Quest?
Well,
Some
um,
nerd knowledge, if you will.
it was a very bold experiment on the
Mhm.
part of Hanna Barbera, who's doing, things like Huckleberry Hound and
Mhm.
the Flintstones. And Joe Barbera himself loved these newspaper adventure strips that were kind of more prevalent then, but like Terry and the Pirates and things like that. There was a radio show called Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy. And Joe, just being the head of the studio, is like, I want to make something like that, only animated. And he, kind of bit off in a way almost more than they could chew. And
Mhm.
they found out really quickly that their in-house guys, as talented as they were, mainly guys that came up doing Tom and Jerry's from MGM over to them, working on things like the Flintstones, or guys that were in the Warner Short department moving over when that was closing down. And they didn't have, I'm not even going to say the skill set, they didn't really practice in that realistic drawing style. And so what happened was, and I've told the story a lot, is that basically they had to find a lot of comic strip artists and kind of train them,
Mhm.
because they could already draw, but they had to train them in the technical aspects of animation. And so what I kind of learned was, I had a conversation with Joe Barbera, and I said, I'm sorry, Johnny Quest only went 26 episodes, and also Jetsons only went 26 originally. And and he says, yeah, I know that was a big mistake to cancel it, but and he explained it to me. He said, at the time, you didn't know about home video really, or reruns or syndication, any of that. The show was on the network, and that was kind of it,
Mhm.
or that's as far as they could think of it. And as far as like income, and they were paid by a network to do certain amount of episodes. Well, Johnny Quest because it's technical and detailed and complex, cost the studio twice as much to make that show as, say, Top Cat or
Mhm.
Flintstones or something. It just did. And those beautiful backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
And it just cost that. And so after the first season, the network said, "Oh, we'll do more Jonny Quest." And Joe was like, we make twice as much money doing something else. So we're going to set this one aside and do, it might have been Top Cat or whatever it was. I'm not entirely sure. But they went kind of back to program. And then, of course, a few years later, when they're doing adventure shows on Saturday morning, like Space Ghost and Herculoids and Galaxy Trio, et cetera, they're a lot simpler than Jonny Quest. They're beautiful looking, but they're not that level of detail on and sophistication in any way. And certainly, like writing wise, they aren't. So Joe was like, if I'd only known that Quest would be this giant thing in reruns and go on and be this big hit thing, yeah, we would have made a bunch more. So here we are on this side of history, like wanting that time machine,
Yeah.
going back and fixing that. Like the third season of the original Star Trek, I want more of that show. I want 7 years of that show instead of the new ones, kind of thing. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, that it did. And it all like it usually does, it always brings up a couple more. Now, I didn't know about the illustrators that they had to go and hire to bring them in and then train them in-house to kind of make, the pictures move. Um, is there any one of those artists that might have stuck out as a possible X factor that you can highlight on, whether it was, if they did for backgrounds or maybe group shots or anything like that? Does anybody stick out to you?
Well, if you know kind of how animation production was done in the day, there's, script and then it goes to storyboard
Hmm.
and then it goes to models and from the script they start figuring out what everything looks like, the backgrounds and the characters and the props and the vehicles and things. And then it goes to a department called layout. And what layout does or did was they take each individual storyboard panel, they blow it up to production size that the animators are going to use, and they do that first perfect drawing. And on another layer, they figure out what the background is in perspective with the characters. And then they kind of maybe do the last drawing in a scene, in a given scene. Anytime it cuts, that's a new scene.
Hmm.
And then they hand that to animation. Animation will turn the heads and move the arm and blink the eyes and move the jaw and that kind of thing. But layout is the key. If you don't have a really, really good layout, then it all goes to hell. And Hanna-Barbera, bless them, kind of understood that, and they had one of the top layout crews. So Jonny Quest, even though some of the animation can be a little rubbery at times, they got better near the end of the series.
Hmm.
But it would get a little rubbery. That's because these layout guys were these comic strip artists who knew how to draw like that. And they handed them over to animators who basically worked on Flintstones. And so it gets a little rubbery, moving from point A to point B. Uh, as far as anyone that stands out, I shared a room for 7 years with one of their best layout guys, named Tony Segroy, who's kind of an unsung great Hanna-Barbera artist. And he did layouts on two out of those three episodes we picked today. So he did layouts on Robot Spy and layouts on Invisible Monster. Another ones he did was the uh, Dragons of Ishida one. He did layout on, I'm gonna say the Yeti one, and I can kind of see his artwork a mile away,
Hmm.
his style. And guy could just draw really well. And there's another artist, famous Hanna-Barbera artist named Alex Toth, who
Oh yeah.
designed all the other shows, like Space Ghost and
Hmm.
Herculoids and Super Friends. And Toth kind of didn't do wasn't on the ground floor of Jonny Quest, but he did work on it a little bit, and he did layouts for the episode K-Tong Missile Mystery. And you look at the layouts in that, and they're so good. And Alex was a very kind of curmudgeon-y guy with very high standards, but he liked Tony a lot. He had a lot of respect for Tony. And so he would start designing a show, and then Tony would take it over. So he might do the first two or three drawings of Igu for Herculoids, and then Tony would do all the expressions, or he'd do young Samson, and Alex would figure out the characters, but then Tony would do the expressions and turns and things. And Alex would never trust anybody uh,
Yeah.
unless they were great. And Tony was great. He was one of the most talented people I ever knew in my entire life. Um, so he jumps out, but they had dynamite layout guys. A guy named Mel Kiefer, fantastic artist. A guy named Mo Golub, fantastic artist. If you look at their layout credits in the episodes, all their layout guys were top drawer quality layout guys. And then the animation, goes from really, really great to a little rubbery,
Hmm.
and a little odd. Like sometimes the eyes float a little bit.
Yeah.
You have to, they're banging out one of those shows a week, kind of thing at the
That's a
time.
pace. That's a big
Yeah.
pace.
Yeah, and it just happens. But I would say overall the experience of watching the show, a lot of it is the sound, the whole audio experience is
Hmm.
bulletproof. The music and the effects and the voices is really bulletproof. The color palette is really nice. The layouts are really crisp and solid and legible. Great scripts. So I kind of give them a little leeway for having Flintstone guys, do the runs and that.
I love it, man. Um, speaking on those two in particular, Tony and Alex, I'm assuming Tony, I know Alex is no longer here, but I'm assuming Tony's no longer here either.
Correct.
So with you working with him for 7 years, man, what was like the geekiest or nerdiest thing you asked him about Jonny Quest, or what would be something that the fans that listen to the show might be amazed to hear?
I tried not to make him crazy, but um what I just asked him about the experience of it. In fact, a lot of guys like Mel Kiefer was there too, still. And the experience was like, man, that show was a lot of work. Man, we worked a lot of holidays and weekends to get stuff done, and uh so to them, their only real memory of it is that it was a real grind,
Hmm.
and I hate to say that. And I got to know Doug Wildey, the creator of the show, and Doug was sort of like he was constantly frustrated, at the system that he wanted to do a certain level, and he only had time to do a certain level. And he said that show could have been so much better if we had a little time to do it, and da 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 da. And we had to crank those things out, and which is the reality of TV production. It's funny, like Doug later on did for HB he did a Godzilla show, he did Jan of the Jungle, and he left and he went to DePatie Freeling and did a Planet of the Apes animated show. And if you watch that thing, it barely animates at all, but the drawings are really great. And he maintained that he thought that was the better show. He thought that was his favorite show. And I watch it like, I don't think the writing's there, but I understand that Doug felt he had a lot more control over it and could get the thing to look the way he wanted it to look, which is a power that eluded him on Quest most of the time. So, but I was desperate to see that show, and when I finally saw it, I was like, it's a little odd, but it's drawn really well.
Yeah. Now, what about did you get? I know you said Alex would only really trust Tony as far as the people you got to see or work with, but you ever get any chance to talk with Alex or any chance
Yeah,
encounter with him?
I visited Alex at his house a few
Mm.
times. He lived near the studio in the Hollywood Hills. And one of my really stupid missions in life is Alex had done thousands of model sheets for the
Hmm.
studio, thousands of them. And the originals had all been like pilfered at one point or another, but bad Xeroxes, because remember this, we're talking about the 60s and 70s, what the Xerox technology was, were like dittos. I went through every filing cabinet in that company for like 10 years and found every scrap of Toth that I could find. I'm still finding,
Hmm.
I'm still out there looking. And I actually found people with stacks of originals that I copied and things. And I'm trying to do the most comprehensive version of everything Toth did. And one day I sent him a set of what I had at the time, and he invited me over. And we had an interesting talk. Alex was a really interesting guy. He was pretty intense, and it was easy for him to get riled up and angry. And I could, okay, I'm going to go now, kind of thing. But genius, genius, genius. He's an artist. The guy never did a drawing that wasn't kind of brilliant and and in the simplest way possible, like just the right lines and the right gesture. And he was really gifted,
Yeah.
really gifted guy. Every artist worth his salt that knows his stuff goes, oh yeah, yeah. Even really egotistical guys are like, yeah, well, Alex is a whole different deal.
He
So,
always reminded me of we're comparing apples to oranges because the guy I'm going to compare him to is a writer, but just the stories I've heard and things that I've read, he really reminded me of Alan Moore, just the way he would come off and the way he would interact, but I liken him more to Jack the King Kirby as far as his art style, flawless in every stretch of the imagination. Anything I've ever seen, with his name attached to it. I mean, Space Ghost is one of my favorite things of all time. My original, introduction to Space Ghost was obviously Coast to Coast because I'm a little bit younger, but that led me into watching these old school Hanna-Barbera reruns because it would be Jonny Quest and the Hercules. Thundar the Barbarian is one of my, even though it's so corny, like going back and watching that show now, I don't know when the last time you watched the Thundar episode, but I popped it in, my wife got it for me for my birthday a couple years back, the Blu-ray for it. And I pop it in, and then you just see some of the I don't want to shit on any animators, but it was some of like the worst animation, for some of those scenes. But then they would have close-ups where it was like, wow, this is really good. You could really see the difference in artists and things like that, right?
well,
But
that was
yeah.
that was designed by both Toth and Kirby.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was just I don't know what it was about that show that just as a kid really stuck out to me, man. But Dundar the Barbarian was a lot of fun. Keeping it with Doug for just a second, man. Getting to talk to him and pick his brain. Was there always that one question you always wanted to answer? Oh, actually, before we get to that, Alex, you said you were doing this comprehensive thing. Were you trying to do like an Art of Alex book, or what were you collecting
um,
everything for?
I'm going to right now I did a painstaking database of everything,
Hmm.
and I put the word out to various Alex Toth groups and things like, here's what I got. Do you have anything I don't have or have in a worse or a better condition than what I have? And
Hmm.
does anyone have an original that they could scan and send me the scan? But when I did it in the day, when I was kind of hand restoring these bad Xeroxes, I was using a marker and whiteout, you know, and now I have Photoshop and now I have the internet and now I have all these tools. So I'm painstakingly like hand restoring them. I blow them up really big and I get in there with a pen and how would
Hmm.
he ink this and kind of doing this really detailed forensic restoration. And I have to say, once in a while, I'll do one and I'll find the original or a good copy of the original, look at it and say, wow, I got it.
Yeah.
I nailed it. And there are people that are real art experts and Alex Toth experts I've shared these with, and they're like telling me I'm nailing it. Getting Mark Chiarello, who is a big Toth fan and a friend of his, and art director at DC for decades, who's a brilliant, brilliant artist himself. And I was showing him the Toth stuff, and he was like, "Wow, yeah, when you're done, I want a set of this, kind of thing." So it's going to take me another year and a half, maybe, to get it all done.
Hmm.
And then, because it's painstaking, there's a lot of it. Alphabetically, I'm in the middle of C Lab 2020 right now.
Yeah,
But I have Super Friends, Shazam, Shazam, a lot of shows like that. Young Samson, shows like that. So when I get it all done, then I'm going to figure out what I do with it. You know, maybe interest a publisher or whatever. But I'll tell you, it's very self-serving. Like I have sketchbooks. I get famous people to draw on them, and I trade them a set of copies sometimes. And I get like, Alex Ross did a painting for me, for the Toast stuff. I
that's
became
so
friends with
cool.
him. I became friends with Steve Rude, and he's a big Toth guy, obviously, and so I kind of use it for that sometimes. But at
Mhm.
some point, I should publish it, or
Do
have
you
it.
have do you have an idea of what you want it to be, or you just want to finish it first?
I want to finish it first, then I'm going to think
Yeah.
about that. I mean, there's so much stuff, it might have to be like a couple of volumes.
Hey, there's
I
plenty
mean,
of us fans that'll be out there wanting to buy it if you can get it published.
yeah, it's literally like a couple of thousand sheets. And I'm once in a while I find a new one, and I know sometimes I have an episode, and it'll be here's this episode of whatever. It could be Clue Club or anything, and it says model sheet 1 of 4, and then it'll go to and 4 of 4 and 2 and 3. I don't know where, and I'm always looking for those little holes. He went over to studio called TMS, and there was a show called Bionic Six, and he had tons of models for that. I'm missing a lot of those. I have a lot, but I'm missing a lot. And they're beautiful. They're on, legal paper, and lots of drawings on them, and they're beautiful. And I'm looking, looking, looking. Anyone that hears this, if you have a Toth original model, get me a scan of that sucker, and I'll trade you some really cool scans you've never seen of that. And I don't need the original. I just want a good 300 DPI JPEG of
Mhm.
it. Um, Steve Rude had a nice little stack. Another animator, a retired animator friend of mine, had a nice little stack. These guys bought these things at conventions, and a lot are probably lost forever. Might have been stolen and then lost or whatever. But God, it's an ongoing thing. It'll probably take the rest of my life to, fill the holes.
Well, I hope you get to fill those holes, man. Was there one or two shows that were probably the hardest for you to track down as far as Alex goes?
Um, some have better copy qualities than others. I'd say a lot of the Super Friends stuff is really yikes. It's going to be a lot of work when I get to it.
Hmm.
Um, like I'm working on C Lab right now, and it's really a detailed, technical show, and it's a lot of work. Um, it just depends on the thing, and
I got you.
yeah,
I got you, man. All right, now getting it back to sorry. Oh, last thing on this one, man. Did you check out they just released last week, but they released Herculoids the first issue. You already picked it up.
yeah,
I got
yeah.
it sitting in my store now. I'm gonna go pick it up to tomorrow when I go and get new comics.
But I have a comment. Okay,
Uh-oh.
that company has some good covers and some bad covers and multiple covers. There's no friggin' Alex Toth covers. I'm sorry, no
Alex
Alex
Ross.
Ross covers, and no Steve Rude covers. And these are the two best guys in the world to draw or paint those characters. The best guys in the world. And they've proved it repeatedly that they are perfect for that subject matter and have done it quite a bit. And like, I see some of those covers are really good, but some of them are like, yikes.
Dog
And
shit.
and there's one where Jonny Quest, I swear to God, he looks like Dr. Smith. I don't know,
Mhm.
but like we're Ross and Rude, and pay them whatever in the hell they want. You can make posters out of it and t-shirts and limited edition cells and things. They're the best guys in the world at that material, and they would kill it. They would love to do it. I know personally they would love to do it. And Alex has done work for Dynamite in the past.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
what I don't understand it, man. When you told me when we talked when Jonny Quest came out, I think it was late last year or early last year, the comic, and then you told me he hadn't even been approached. I'm like, how the fuck do you not approach as the best cover artist of all time to do one, at the very least, one of these? I don't get it.
and
Ladies and gentlemen,
I
please get
told
this guy
Alex
one.
like if he did a Johnny, really comprehensive Johnny Quest cover, I would just have to make payments on the original. I just
Yeah.
have to, and I'm trying to pay off my house and be responsible with money. But that's where the rubber meets the road.
Oh, absolutely.
Steve Rude did a cover for a Johnny Quest Laserdisc set that never happened.
Hmm.
But he did a cover. There was a Flintstone Laserdisc set that John Kay did all the artwork for on the outside and inside. And it came out, and Johnny Quest was the second set. And they commissioned Rude to do the cover, and he did a beautiful, beautiful Johnny Quest painting, gorgeous painting. And the Laserdisc format died, and it killed the project. And anyway, I was at Rude's house and I'm flipping through paintings in his closet and I see that one and my head blows up, right? And I was, dude, what? And he told me, yeah, it's a laser set. I said, that's not going to be in your closet. That's going to be in a really nice frame on my wall. So we'll have to figure it out. And it took a year or two to find something that he wanted to trade for it.
Yeah.
But that sucker's in my on my wall right now.
Would you end up trading? And is it close? Can you show everybody? Is it close?
No, it's a big painting
Okay.
and
Would you end up trading them?
um some artwork that he wanted that I
Yeah.
that so I could almost drop the I could okay, you're on my messenger here.
Uh-huh.
I could theoretically drop the painting in there, and if you can do something, you may. Let me just give me a moment here. And I'll show you the Quest painting. This thing has never been published.
The
Um,
painting? The painting hasn't?
Never been published. And it is a masterpiece. It's my actual favorite Steve Rude painting. And I just sent it to you.
Holy
So,
shit.
yeah, yeah.
My God, that is beautiful.
And it's like 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. It's pretty big.
Jesus. Robot spies in the background in the shadow too.
Yeah, yeah.
My God.
Not bad, right?
Dude, that might be the prettiest thing I've seen all year.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, the level of
They
detail.
don't get him to do a cover. They could use that and stick a logo on it and it would be a cover, and they won't. So
Dynamite. 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 I'm looking at you, Dynamite. Shame on you for one for not asking these two gentlemen. Eh, Please. I don't know if anybody from Dynamite listens to my show. I've had a few people from IDW that listen to my show. But if anybody knows anybody in Dynamite, please reach out to these two gentlemen and get a cover done. This is, I'm so glad you've got this hanging on your wall. That didn't deserve to stay in his closet. That's just, Jesus Christ, that's beautiful. Um, all right, getting it. God damn this. I would
yeah,
sit my chair in front of it and I would just sit there and
you're
look at
kind
it
of
all
you're kind
fucking
of
day.
speechless. Right? Yeah, I
Oh
get it.
man, it's gorgeous. We're keeping or getting it back to Johnny Quest here, man. So
Yeah.
before we rotate into those three episodes, you said you got to know Doug, the creator, and befriend him, and I'm pretty sure you got to ask him anything and everything you could possibly think of. What was your relationship like with him? How was he as a person? Was he a nice guy? What was he like?
He and his wife were Ellen were friggin' delightful.
Hmm.
And I never knew my own grandparents, and I always thought like, man, I wish these guys were my grandparents.
Yeah.
And I love the hell out of them. They're very, very nice people. And I got the call at work when I was working on Animaniacs, the original one, and I got the call at work on the hallway phone. We didn't have individual phones. You got paged and you grab the hallway phone. And I think it was Steve Rude, and he said, "Dude, Doug just died." I went, "Oh man," and
Yeah.
it was hard to work the rest of the day, because I was kind of a wreck. But I love the guy. I know where your questions are going. Like, did he tell me anything? And the main thing, the main thing was um, that he preferred his Planet of the Apes show, which was like, what? What the what? And he and Joe fought a lot. I love Joe, I love Joe,
Mhm.
but over production matters, Doug got fired from that show like 3 times during production, and then
Yeah.
desperately hired back right away. And there's a story I always tell, so I'll tell it really quickly, is they wanted to use solid blacks.
Mhm.
Doug wanted to use solid blacks on backgrounds, and they never do that in animation, TV animation at the time because they want the characters to read, and so they gray out the background. So there's no such thing as black. There's like a dark grayish blue for shadows and things. And Doug was like, "No, we're doing a comic strip, and comic strips have ink, and ink is black, and that's that." And the night before they had all the originals for Mystery of the Lizard Man done, all the original backgrounds. And the night before they went under the camera, Doug went in the middle of the night into the background department with a big marker and drew black on everything. And there was nothing they could do about it. They just had to shoot it. And he got fired over that. And then when they saw the footage, they're like, "Boy, that looks really good." And he got rehired. So um, it's like one of those fun little behind the scenes stories. And there were a couple of other times that there was a guy named another layout guy named Warren Tufts. Warren was another fantastic illustrator, worked on comic strips. I think there was a thing called Casey Ruggles he did. And Warren was kind of a big airplane buff, and Warren had built a World War I friggin' biplane and flew it.
Mhm.
And he was a nut about it. Well, if you remember, your Jonny Quest, there's an episode called Shadow of the Condor where Race Bannon has a dogfight with another biplane. And Warren was like, "That's my episode." And Warren like, "I'm gonna storyboard it, and I'm gonna do the layouts, and I'm gonna do some of the animation, I'm gonna do some of the background designs." And that show was late, late, late. I mean, they were because this one guy just wouldn't let it go. And he got really, and I looked through the storyboard for that. I wish I copied the storyboards, but I looked at the storyboard, and they're very simple, like lollipop heads. And then you get to the airplane stuff, and it's drawn in exact detail, in
Yeah.
perfect detail. And then it goes back to a head that's like a circle with a slash on that, because the layout department there could interpret those storyboards and just draw them well.
Mhm.
Um, but Warren was really a control freak about the airplane stuff. And later on, he died. He crashed that airplane and died
Yeah.
later. And so anyway, there are a lot of those little anecdotes and things that, Tony, I think, told me that one. But
Yeah.
Tony was really like, I see he was reluctant to talk about it because he was just like, "Man, that was so much work, that show." And Mel Kiefer, I didn't see my family that whole year because they were working on that show. And so I kind of get it. Like I have been in my career, worked on like really, I'm not going to mention anything by name, but I worked on really good shows that were incredibly stressful,
Mhm.
and they just burn you out. And they
Yeah.
came out great and people love them and terrific. But other shows that were like kind of ultimately kind of crummy shows that I had a great time on because the culture of the show was really fun. And we did this animated sequel to the movie Kangaroo Jack.
Oh.
And the animated movie was terrible, but oh my God, like I was sharing a cubicle with my best friend and we were just laughing all day. And I met like several lifelong friends on that show that I still have to this day. And rarely had more fun. than on that stupid Kangaroo Jack movie that is in gone into oblivion. There was another one, a direct-to-video Dinotopia movie, and boy, the crew on that was really good. Alex Nino, famous Alex Nino, is a great Jack Kirby of the Philippines. He was on backgrounds. I've been a fan of his since I was a kid, and I got to work with Alex and all my favorite people were on that show. Yeah, nobody's ever seen that movie. So
Well,
there you
hopefully, somebody will be flipping through a closet one day and we'll get to see it and we'll get to put that out. You know what I mean? We'll try to trade some art for it,
Yeah.
to if we can't get it out there, man. So, all right. We got three episodes that you said stood out the most when it came to the first 26, man. So those episodes were Robot Spy, Invisible Monster, and Terror Island. So I figure we can start with Robot Spy. And I know you said earlier in the episode that this was your favorite, probably your favorite episode. So what was this one, or why was this one your favorite? Why did this one stick out so much to you?
Well, that one I have early memories of being really, really scared by that big spider eyeball thing.
Yes.
And it was just such a great, great graphic design. And a little aside, Doug Wildey for a little bit did a trio of Jonny Quest comics fully painted that adapted episodes.
Hmm.
And he did the werewolf one, and he did the Shadow of the Condor, the and Calcutta Adventure. I think he did those three, and they're painted. I mean, they're beautiful. And I was like, I wish he did the Robot Spy. He goes, it's kind of boring. It just has that shape in it. And it's like, oh, all right. But I remember that thing. At one point, I heard that it actually had this muffled heartbeat, and it was just mysterious and scary and spooky. And there was just something about it that was kind of like it was sci-fi, but it wasn't. I think there's a flaw in the episode that if you watch it without knowing the title, you think it's an alien, you think it's a UFO with this weird spider alien.
Hmm.
Title tells you it's the robot spy. In fact,
Yeah.
the shooting title was Dr. Zin's Robot Spy. So it gives away everything. It's like saying Planet of the Apes on Earth, it's like saying that. And it just has a nice mood. It's sophisticated. It has a pace that's, builds and builds, but it starts really quiet and then it kind of dun 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 dun
Hmm.
dun 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 dun. It starts to kind of build and then great ending and then we'll meet again, Dr. Quest, soon. I promise you. And the thing blows up. Um, a thing I liked is Dr. Zen is in 4 episodes and he never meets them. He's always like seen on the TV screen or something. So he sends underlings and they get killed.
Yeah.
That's the only reason Dr. Zen was never killed is
He
he
never
sends
meets
underlings and
childhood.
get killed.
Good night.
But oh yeah, I love that one because yeah, of course you got their big villain in there, I think, and the robot spider's fantastic. I like that. He's kind of Dr. Quest also has a lab on a military base,
Yeah.
with tanks and it's just friggin' great. Um,
The the thing that stuck out the most to me, I don't know if there's a term for the shot, but it's when the scientist is calling Dr. Quest and the robot comes in and it kind of like flashes almost like an X-ray and you see everything kind of turn red, the yellow, the
oh,
orange.
that's Invisible Monster.
Oh shit, I got that one. Fuck. I've got that one.
That's okay. We'll
No.
get we'll
Oh no
get
no,
there.
Robot Spy. It was Robot Spy when he calls when the fuck am I thinking Invisible Monster?
Thinking Invisible Monster.
Shit. I am thinking Invisible
But
Monster.
you can listen. You can cut that out.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna leave it in. I don't mind sounding like an asshole. I was reading the wrong one. I had a Robot Spy, so when I text myself my notes, it'll send it and it'll send it twice. So the one I send and then one I receive. So I had the top of it cut off, and then when I scrolled up, it was it was the Invisible Monster. So going back to the actual Robot Spy
Mhm.
notes that I had on here, it was very topical as far as what's happening right now, all the UFOs, the UAPs, everything
Yeah,
happening
yeah.
that's going on. So it opens up with that beautiful shot of that original flying saucer from way back in the day, right? Skipping across. I loved it. The other thing that I loved in this episode, like I said, I had to scroll back up to actually get to the right episode. The other thing that I absolutely loved about this episode, and I don't know if it's because I had the standard version and not the Blu-ray version or the the updated HD version of the series, but it looked like there was, especially in a lot of the crowd shots, it looked like a lot of Kirby dots, like that illustration form. It would stop and maybe just for like a split second it would transition between scenes, but it looked like some of those background shots with characters had Kirby dots in transition for things moving out. Next time when I pop it back on, I'll take a couple pictures and I'll text them over to you to see if that's it, or maybe like I said, it's just some kind of
Yeah.
whatever the words
Now,
formatting.
do this again. Again, are you thinking of Invisible Monster? Because it has effects and
Well, there's a couple scenes in here. I think it might just be a formatting issue when they took it
okay.
from whatever they did to the disc, because I noticed when I was watching it on HBO Max instead of my DVD, it was a lot crisper, it was a lot cleaner, and in between those transition shots, I didn't see what looked like Kirby dots. So I think it might just be the DVD format that it was on.
The Blu-ray looks really beautiful.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the Blu-ray for a couple of reasons. But one is that until then, all the video releases, including the DVD, they
Mhm.
didn't have the proper end credits. They just grabbed end credits from one episode and just put them in all of them.
Uh,
Where the Blu-ray, each individual episode has correct credits as to who wrote it, who the layout people were, who the animators were. Um, so I think that's really important. Um,
Absolutely.
and so the Blu-ray doesn't have a lot in terms of extras, doesn't have a lot, but the quality, but it's not censored. The other
Mhm.
versions before that have a little bit of censorship here and there and little slightly non-politically correct things that were done in the 60s
Yeah.
that got cut out of the other versions, and the Blu-ray versions are pure, so they have those handful of lines.
Mhm.
Um, so
You're right on. I'm gonna have to, because I bought all the other Hanna-Barbera ones that they've released. I bought them all on Blu-ray, and I don't know why I bought Jonny Quest. Maybe they just didn't have it at the time I tried to buy it. I don't know what it is, but all my other ones are in Blu-ray, so I'm gonna have to upgrade after we get off this talk. So what was your favorite scene from this episode in particular? Just one or two stick out?
oh boy, there's a scene where the kids are in their room and the spy's kind of running around the base
Hmm.
and it's kind of comes up from behind and it peeks
Yeah.
in. And the kids are, oh, do you hear something? And the legs kind of flip over and it
Hmm.
it it kind of
Scurries.
and I thought, man, that's friggin' cool. But just I'll tell you the whole scene at the end where it's just marching out. All right, we're
Hmm.
gonna try flamethrowers, we're gonna try guns, we're gonna try tanks, and nothing stops it except when it gets hit, it kind of squints his eyes and moves back. You notice it's in the opening credits, but it's colored differently. It's colored gray, and in
Hmm.
the episode it's colored black because they were experimenting a little bit when they put together the main credits and they fixed it later for the episode. But there was when I got to write Jonny Quest, the first episode I did was about the Golem and set in Prague. And I beat for beat stole that bit. So
Yeah.
the Golem is marching and they try flamethrowers and they try machine guns and they try cannons and and he just keeps coming. And that's my love letter,
That was
to
your little
robots.
homage.
Yeah. And I hope people pick up on that. I don't want to I hope they don't see I stole something. I want them to see the love letter. Um,
Yeah.
so that's got a lot of nice things. My least favorite scene is something a quest thing I don't like that they do. And I think it was a big bit of friction between Doug and Joe Barbera, again, whom I love dearly.
Mhm.
This t-shirt I'm wearing, this is
Oh,
this
that's
is out
beautiful,
of
Fred.
Joe Barbera's closet.
Yeah.
His secretary, what for years and years, his executive assistant, a woman named Maggie, who I love to pieces, and Maggie passed away a few years ago. But Maggie's daughter Mia is still a really really good friend of mine, and we had dinner last week, and Mia just like, oh, see these shirts? These used to be Joe's. Why don't you take a couple? Like, "What?" So this is one of Joe Barbera's t-shirts.
It's so
Um,
cool. Did you feel a
but
superpower when you put it on? Did you
well,
feel
he
any
never
superpowers?
wore them. These are all th like bits of merchandise samples that were sent to him, and he just kind of had them.
Yeah.
But so this might be the first time anyone's ever worn this particular shirt, but it was in Joe's closet. So what was I gonna say? What was I gonna say? Um,
Oh, Doug and Joe were fighting
yeah,
over.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. It was the bandit stuff. It was
Mhm.
like you set up this creepy mood. Nah, nah, nah. Look out, boys, and you wait here, and they're going to investigate the spy. And all of a sudden, bandits like they play this light music, and bandits chasing a rabbit, and like, oh, bandit, it's oh that rabbit, he's a ferocious rabbit, and they just antics, and the rabbit scares bandit, and he's running around, and then the guys say, "Quiet, boys," and the music, nah, nah, nah. And it's like you could cut that out like that. But was really you got to have that comedy scene in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I like a balance, but I thought that was disruptive to the mood of the story that they were setting up. And they did that a lot with that kid. And I'm a big dog guy, and I
Mhm.
love Bandit more than Doug Wildey did for sure. But um, I like it better when he's like a real dog and he's not doing these little cartoony things and winking and you know,
Scooby-Doo thing.
yeah, I'm not a, I like it. I like the show realistic,
Yeah.
so.
I feel you. Um, Now, so we hit your favorite scene and your least favorite scene. Now, is there any piece of dialogue in here that you think is just like spot on perfect? Does anything stick out?
Boy, I like everything. There's that guard that gets knocked out by the spy and he zaps him with the kind of suction cup tentacle on his
Hmm.
forehead and they wake him up. It was some kind of eye spider thing and like Dr. Quest knew the guy's name and there was just something very real about that
Hmm.
moment. And he has that red mark on his forehead from
Yeah.
that got him. And I also like the Republic serial villain dialogue of Dr. Zinn is just funny
Hmm.
to me. Study it, learn its secrets, and bring it back to me. And I love that stuff. Fun fact, you know it, I'm sure. Maybe people don't know it. The voice of Dr. Zinn was an actor named Vic Perrin. If Vic Perrin is the voice of the Outer Limits, there's nothing wrong with your television set. That's Dr. Zinn. Also, in
Oh,
an original Star Trek episode called Mirror Mirror, one of the best original episodes, the Enterprise crew is on this planet and there's very peaceful, kind of pacifistic guys that don't want to give up their dilithium no matter what. And he said, "Well, Captain, it would your our dilithium might be used for weapons, and we can allow that." And then it was this guy with white hair, and then well, that's Vic Parent, so that's Dr. Zinn and the voice of the Outer Limits.
oh wow. Look at that.
So and he was great. He had a lot of miscellaneous HP villains and bad guys and things and background characters. So he had such a good radio voice. He was a radio guy. So
Well, that's really
I
cool. I
like
didn't know any of
Dr.
that.
His Dr. Zen was clearly, like you could never get away with that now, you know. But
So
I like
with this episode, if you had to give it out of 5 stars, what are you giving this episode for Johnny Quest?
dude, all the
Five
Johnny
for
Quest
five.
five to me, all of them.
All of the ones, yeah.
All
Okay.
26 episodes are like as good as it gets, you
Yeah.
know. Would I fine tune some of the drawing, some of the animation? Sure, but all those things I mentioned, the music, the voice acting, the stories, the layouts, the storytelling, spot freaking on like the
Yeah.
best.
Absolutely, man. All right. So the one that I've been getting robots robot spy mixed up with here now that I'm on the right set of notes, man. The Invisible Monster, man.
Right.
Why did you pick this one? What was it that stuck out about this one?
Well, that's also just another really dynamite story with a lot of really cool things in it. But it seems, and people are always mentioning what the best Johnny Quests are. It's one of those two episodes is usually the answer. Like people really respond to Invisible Monster and Robot Spy like more than any other. If you look on the Blu-ray extras that I'm part of, but all the people being interviewed, including Ross and Rude and so on, Brad Bird, uh, like almost all of them talk about those two episodes as being standouts. But I'm gonna say like they're all really great. Invisible Monster obviously was inspired by the invisible creature from the id from the movie Forbidden Planet,
Mhm.
classic science fiction movie. Um, which I don't have any problem with. It really showed off a couple bits of technology that was really special. The vertical takeoff and landing jet that was
Yeah.
only theoretical when they made that episode. It was in a Popular Mechanics. Doug Wildey went, "Wow, we're going to put that in the show." Didn't even think of an airplane that would take off like that. That blew his mind. He put it in the episode, and of course, it was quite a while later where they came up with the Harrier jump jet, which does that. But a jet that worked like a helicopter was mind blowing. The other bit of technology in there was, of course, they had the hovering, those round red hovering pods. They were in
Hmm.
that. But the other one were the jetpacks. Well, they call them the
Yes.
rocket belts. And so that episode has rocket belts. And a cell I have like one Johnny Quest cell, and it's
Just
Johnny
one?
Race and Haji wearing the rocket belts, and Race has the gun. I know it's a Tony Segura drawing because it's so spot on. It's so perfect. And I really lucked out in finding that cell. And actually, I have the storyboard panel of page of the Robot Spy unfolding. It's like a
Well, that's
nine
so cool.
nine grid diagram of how it unfolds. And I found that in a freaking filing cabinet in Hanna Barbera. You know, in the
Wow.
in the in the basically in the
Basement.
storage room, kind of in the basement. And I'm like, well, I know what this is. Yoink, and I think somebody else is trying to steal it and they stashed it. And well, Saleeby, it's on my wall. So my Quest cell signed by Bill, Joe, Doug, and Tim Matheson. And so yeah, the rocket, so that had a lot of really good technology. The monster was really sci-fi, it was really a sci-fi idea. Um, I like of course, the trope of Dr. Quest has an old friend
Hmm.
who's a doctor and things go to hell and he shows up, except in that case, poor Isaiah Norman had been absorbed by the energy creature and he absorbed a village or two, a native village or two.
Hmm.
I think it was like South America. And but that's just a good straight up monster story with a beginning, middle, and end. And they kind of kill it. In fact, the killing it is kind of a little based on the movie The Thing from Another World that later on John Carpenter remade as The Thing. But the original one was luring the monster into this corridor where they electrocute him. And that's
Hmm.
kind of like, what they did. So I'm sure they were kind of looking at those things and kluging them together. And to be fair, man, like one of the Johnny Quests I wrote in the 90s, it was like it was aliens crossed with the abyss. It was like my Jim Cameron story. And it's something we do. We just try and make a fresh version of it. But if you look at Invisible Monster, it's got a really good beginning, middle, and end. It builds nice and slow. The threat's really clear and crisp, and um,
Very
you know,
ominous as it's going
yeah,
through too.
there's a bit where the thing's bearing down on Haji, and our guys have
Hmm.
to swoop in on their jetpacks and yank him out of the way, and Bandit the dog runs out, and they're going to get him, kind of
Hmm.
thing. So there's a lot of immediate peril. And Dr. Quest is really brave. He says, "I'm going to lure that thing into this thing," and if that thing didn't work, he would have been toast.
Yeah.
And Reese Bannon, even though he's a bodyguard, didn't say like, "Well, doctor, let me do it." He's letting Dr. Quest be a man, and letting him go in there and do this thing. And so those aspects of it I really like. Um, just man, just really solid.
Mhm.
So
Well, I don't know if you've heard this before or if I told you this, but like my favorite scene in this episode is when the doctor is calling Dr. Quest and he goes
yeah,
yellow, red, and orange and all that
yeah,
other
yeah,
shit. There was a
yeah,
couple shots that were like that. It was, whether it was an X-ray or just the electrocution coming out when he was getting absorbed. I
yeah.
love that style of shot. I don't know if that's called
Right,
anything in particular,
right.
but I love that shot.
Kind of flip it into a negative back and
Yes,
forth,
yes.
which is an old trick they do in the Outer Limits also. But they flip it back and forth when he gets it, and then later on there was a native that
Hmm.
gets it and is very innovative, because you're
Hmm.
looking at it, how the hell did they do that? Well, they actually reverse the negative back and forth. So yeah, it's great. It's great stuff.
So how would they do that? Would they just invert colors and just lay it over when they would snap the picture for the animation or?
They're just however you reverse a negative.
Hmm.
Um, it's an optical trick. And another thing about that particular episode is there's a bit of body count. Like it wiped out a village and it wiped
Yeah.
out that professor. And ultimately the monster got killed, right?
Hmm.
So although I don't think you call it sentient, but that was the thing about Jonny Quest. Like, not that I'm bloodthirsty, well, maybe a little, but the villains get killed on that show. I
Yeah,
mean,
they
our
got
guys.
whacked a lot.
Oh, and we'll get into the third one. That's a really high body count. Race running around with the grenades and guns and things, killing guys. So
The fact that that was on hand, like I'm watching that episode and I've got the 4-year-old down here and the 2-year-old down here, and I hadn't seen these three episodes in a very long time. Like I rewatched this the first 26, last year when I got this DVD, and so I'd forgot about it, and then it gets to that last episode that we'll talk about in the grenade scene, and I'm like, holy shit, this is pretty dark for for
right.
a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, man. Um, but keeping it with the invisible monster for just a little bit longer before we get to that last episode. Um, do you have a favorite piece of dialogue in this one? Is there anything that sticks out the most to you when you think about this episode?
I think that episode had like three or four. What do you make of it, Doctor?
Yeah.
I don't know, Race. And they're just sent. That's very Johnny Quest to me. It's classic Johnny Quest. Um, I like just the procedure of them explaining to the audience how the jet, okay, and now we're going to cut the horizontal power and put on the vertical power. And you see the
Yeah.
jet, the under jet shut off and the back one light up, the jet moves. So I like that kind of tech stuff, but it's really just how Dr. Quest takes charge and
Hmm.
like, I'm gonna lure it in this cave and this light and and you have to switch that light off and turn that one on and be ready on that switch, and I just like that stuff. I like when he's really decisive. Again, when I was writing the show, I had a lot of fun writing very decisive Dr. Quest, who is really in control and
Hmm.
charge and really had a lot of ideas. So I just kind of like the tone of that. I think the bit where the kids like stow away. Oh no, no, that was Terror Island. See, I did it too.
Ah, I got you on one. See?
Totally, totally.
But with that one, I loved you had mentioned oh shit, a movie that they pulled from.
Well, The
What was
Thing or Forbidden Planet.
There you go, Forbidden Planet. I loved how they're obviously trying to figure out like where does this monster look like? How do we track him down? Like how do we get eyes on him, right? And they start hitting him, what was it, with paint, blue and pink
Yeah,
paint.
yeah.
And then the sound, I mean, this is probably super nerdy and you probably don't know, but do you know what kind of a sound that would have been taken from as far as the library goes for sounds?
Oh,
It
like,
just sounds so familiar.
I
Yeah.
bet somebody just did that voice. I bet
Yeah.
somebody made a weird, funny voice that they liked or a creepy voice. Could have been anybody
Yeah, I
that did it.
really dug it. I thought it fit really well.
It might have been Vic Perrin or somebody. Oh yeah, it's great. It's a beautiful design, like the one eye and the giant mouth, and
Yes.
Beautiful design. And then kind of colored in that paint and electricity coming off and like beautiful, beautiful stuff. Really, that has some very, very nice animation in it. And again, look at the layouts of that episode, not necessarily how things are moving, but the first drawing in a scene where the guys are charging down and they're lifting Haji and like look how good that drawing is.
Hmm.
Um, it looks like the best panel of a comic in a
Yeah.
comic book and things. But again, that story just has a nice rhythm to it and it builds and builds and it has a good intriguing prologue, of course, with it where the scientist brings it to life and everything blows up. But then our guys are investigating this wreckage of this lab, and we don't know what's going on, and the audience knows what's going on, kind of thing. So,
Yeah, like I said, solid episode. And like I said, this is like when I think about this episode, this might be the first episode that I can remember seeing for Jonny Quest. Now, I did want to circle back before we go to this last episode and start to wrap it up. You had mentioned something on the Blu-ray edition when you were talking about how you were getting interviewed. I think you said Brad Bird and a couple other guys, Alex and somebody else. You had said
Alex
that it was
Seabrook,
Steve. That's right.
so Tom Minton, who's a great Warner Brothers writer, my friend Dan Reba, who's a great Warner Brothers director, and then Alex T. and Brad Bird and me. So what I say is it's a bunch of famous guys and me, like being interviewed. But I'm the guy that knows the show probably a little more forensically than they do, you know.
Oh, I have to imagine, man. You're knee deep in it. You know, it being one of your favorite shows, it'd be hard pass to go to anybody if I had any Johnny Quest questions other than you. But you had mentioned that in particular, the first two episodes we talked about, the Invisible Monster and Robot Spy. Those were like the two most recognizable for most people, or most brought up enough, or
Yeah.
brought up, when it comes to the entire series. But like, why is it these two in particular?
Um,
In
I
your
think
opinion,
the monsters are memorable, and
yeah,
scary and visually really like distinctive. Like, wow,
yeah,
I've never seen anything that looked like either of those things. But
mm,
listen, I think it's a really solid show. If somebody said, I like Shadow the Condor and Double Danger, for example, I totally get why somebody would love those the most. Yeah, I totally
yeah,
get that. I get why if somebody like uh, Pursuit of the Poho is really strong, Lizardman's really strong, Arctic Splashdown, I go through all of them and say, well, that's a Terror Island. I said Terror Island, but the very last episode, Sea Haunt, that's a great episode.
mm,
Um, so I think those two just have really memorable monsters that kind of jump out at you a little bit, but they're all good. They're all
yeah.
good. So
That they are, man. Great episodes. Now this might be a little bit too in the weeds,
uh,
but when they would do these shows like, Godzilla and Space Ghost and, Johnny Quest, when they would replay them on Hanna Barbera and old school Cartoon Network, would they have to license the entire series in particular to run reruns, or would they license specific episodes? That might be too in the weeds of a question. Um,
um, I'm sure that they get the rights to run the season,
okay.
at least the season. Um, like if you have the rights to run Johnny Quest, you get to run the 26 episodes, or Jetsons
Okay.
the 26, or Top Cat. Top Cat's another great show that only did 26 original episodes. I mean, later on, everything had a little sequel or a reboot or something.
Mhm.
I've been involved in a couple myself, but yeah, the real one is the real one, in my mind.
Oh, absolutely. And the only reason I ask you that question is because I think, just looking at it, surface value, they obviously play a lot more episodes, from a series, other more so than other episodes. And I didn't know if it'd be just one of those things where maybe they played those two episodes in particular, maybe a little bit more on a loop or anything like that. And maybe
No,
that's why
no.
it resonated with so many people.
Yeah, no, I think the episodes themselves just kind of jump out in the
Yeah.
pack because they're
Yeah.
such cool monsters.
Mhm. Absolutely. And then the last episode we're talking about, man, Terror Island. What I love about this one, you had mentioned it when we started talking loosely about the episodes, is this is a Godzilla kaiju episode, and
Yeah.
I love Godzilla stuff. I'm more of a King Kong fan myself. I like the mammals over the lizards, you know what I mean? But I loved this episode just because you get to see this. It's this giant crab that starts it, right? And he's just walking through pinching. I don't
And
like.
the animation on that crab is amazing. The
Mm-hmm.
way the legs are all like somebody really killed themselves. And
Painstakingly went through that.
and they use that footage quite a bit because
Hmm.
it's, you know, yeah, it's beautiful. And then a giant spider, a giant tarantula.
Yeah.
And then
And what
that
was it, the
lizard,
iguana? Yeah, the
yeah,
iguana thing
and then
or
the big iguana, and at the end, you get
yeah,
your payoff.
Godzilla.
Yeah, but you get your payoff. And he gets the bad guys.
Hmm. Now, what was
And
it about this episode that stuck out to you?
well, it's a really, really good. Jade was in 2 episodes,
Hmm.
and it's a really good Jade episode. Like she's awesome in this show. She's so helpful and sexy, but greedy, but self-centered, but very capable.
Mischievous.
Like everything. Yeah, it's a really good look. She had 2 looks, and I like that kind of, that satin dress, and
Hmm.
she's almost in an opium den, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like she just goes off to like, I'll rescue him, kind of thing. And and I friggin' love her in it. Just a little thing to connect that show and my show, my version of the show was Zin was in 4 originals and Jade was in 2. So we deliberately mirrored that.
Hmm.
So, and I got to write both Jade episodes in the modern era, and I tried to really continue all those aspects of her character best I could. And Dr. Zin, the other writer, Glenn Leopold, wrote the 3 zins, and I wrote one of the zins. I said, I got to do them. I got to write them at least once, you
Yeah.
know. But geez, I like the setting at Hong Kong. Like, talk about a ambitious setting for like basically like a TV cartoon that they did the Chinese New Year's parade and they
Hmm.
had a chase in the streets of Hong Kong, and those backgrounds are amazing, like really detailed. I mean, they did what they could not to show crowds, they were just silhouettes and things, but they
I
made sure
loved it. That was my favorite
to
part.
animate that dragon, but you're not sitting there thinking like, this is cheap. I was thinking like, wow, they really spent a little time on this thing. And they do the bandit stuff with the firecrackers, and that wasn't bad. That didn't annoy me because it was in context of the story. And the whole scene is the kids are enjoying the parade.
Hmm.
So here's some more funny, fun stuff during that sequence. That's fine. It's in Robot Spy where it's a real heavy, moody thing. And they cut away to Bandit playing with a rabbit, and the music gets real, real light. And I think that kind of breaks it, breaks the
Yeah.
mood. But he was used perfectly in the other one, perfectly. And actually he's used perfectly in Invisible Monster too, So Bandit can be a very useful character to break the drama, as Steve Rude said on the DVD, but he's always if he's in context of the story going on, the mood going on, the tone going on, he works fine, you know.
Hmm.
But oh man, I love Jade in that episode so much.
Dude,
And
I love the ending when he's like, I don't have the money to essentially pay you. So he starts making out with her, and then you see the
here's
two
the
boys
down
just
payment. Yeah.
they're just disgusted, like him and Haji are just disgusted at what's going on.
Two
I
girls.
said,
That was so funny. It's like, yeah, Haji, from now on, we work strictly for cash,
yeah,
and yeah, that was great. Of course, the kids playing stowaway, but
yeah.
also Race is not an idiot,
Hmm.
or Dr. Quest's not an idiot. He goes, all right, boys, come out. How'd you know? Like, because you do this all the time.
Yeah.
And the dad is sort of like, yeah, I figured you boys would show up, kind of thing. And again, in my version of the show, I did that once or twice. I had to. And I mean, the show is called Jonny Quest, and
Yeah.
logically, you don't bring these kids in these perilous things, but you gotta rationalize it somehow, or endanger children the same way Batman does. You just gotta,
Just
if
got
you
to
want
throw
them in the
Robin out
show,
there.
yeah, if you want them in the show, you gotta have them in the show. And oh man, I that my favorite scene, I'll just jump to it, is when Jade is going around interrogating guys, and she's interrogating that one guy in the hotel room, and he's sitting on the bed,
Throwing
and
money.
he says, "Hey, what do you know about this kidnapping?" "Oh, I don't know. I'm getting kind of foggy, my memory." And she pulls out some money. "Maybe this'll help." And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's getting clearer." Oh, he mentions a name, and oh no, it's getting foggy again. And she like, all right, gives him a little more money, and he starts
Rolls a
pulling it
three.
a third time, and she just pulls the gun up. Oh no, it's all clear now. And I thought, like, boy, that's a good bit of writing. That's really sweet. You built to that scene. She just didn't go in there. She was like, all right, there's only so much of this I'm gonna
Yeah.
tolerate. And it's like, boy, that's good writing. I like Jade's constant like, oh, I'll help him out, but it's gonna cost you. Yeah, Jade,
Yeah.
I know. And that stuff is fantastic. The villain's a little, on the nose. He's fine. He's a good
Mhm.
design. He's fine. He's just an evil mad scientist, and he gets his.
That he
And
does.
yeah, and they arranged a way for like the monster to get killed too, attacking the scientists, like hits the high tension wires and things. So, um, but that episode just has a lot going on. And then, and some of my favorites are like you got your monster story, can you X-Files story, whatever, but you also have your Ray Spann and James Bond story, and
Mhm.
he's going around the complex and just freaking killing guys
He's whacking people left and right.
who are trying to kill him, but they do it real cleverly. Guy goes around a corner and there's a bulldozer there and he shoots in the blade of the bulldozer and it ricochets and you see the guy fall out. So you don't see him get hit by a bullet. And then this Jeep of these armed men come up and they're like ready to kill him and he puts his hands up and he tosses a grenade in the Jeep. And then you see around the corner, you see an explosion and a wheel come around. And you're like,
Mhm.
it's so you know, the four guys just died, and they
Yeah.
actually kind of a gag out of it. Oh, I love that. There's one really, really good one. The nerve gas episode, with skiing and it's my things are slipping, but boy, Race kills a lot of guys in that episode. Like he's kicking them in that's a nerve gas things. So,
Maybe we should go by and do a race kill count for the entire
oh,
first
totally,
season.
yeah, Race killed a lot of guys,
You
but
think he
but
you think he hit triple digits?
I don't know about that. There are only 26 episodes and but they were very clear that he's not going to kill guys. He's going to kill guys who are trying to kill him,
Yeah.
you know. And a lot of times the villains die from overextending trying to kill our guys, but they die by their own hands. The Chu Sing Ling, you know, raises that big monster and or K-Tong missile mystery. Our guys are in a speedboat going through a land mined or a sea mined um, lake or river in Vietnam. And the sniper accidentally shoots the boss who falls over on the plunger. Or no,
Hmm.
no, no. The boss shoots the guy in the trees who's with the plunger, but he falls over on it and blows up the bad guy. They kind of
Yeah.
kill each other. It's like, yeah, they're overextending themselves. You know, I'd say the most, but yeah, even the kids do some violent things once in a while. They're shooting at alligators, and there's some ones in the Yeti episode where they flat out like kill a couple of guys. We're trying to kill them, but so.
Hey man, sometimes shit gets real. Um, As we start to wind down here, first off, thank you for coming back on. I couldn't think of another person to talk about Johnny Quest and you, man. Just like I said, that first episode that we had, I saw you physically light up when Johnny
Yeah.
Quest came up, man. So it's really cool to see something like that in the folks that we have that same kind of a feeling for, right? I told you this when you came on, man. I was such a huge fan of that Scooby-Doo movie, right? I loved the work that you did before, man. So getting to see you act like me just for that split second meant the entire world, man. So no better person to do Johnny Quest with than you, man. So when you think about Johnny Quest, is there one word, one thought, one emotion, maybe one sentence that might come up that can encapsulate, your love for Johnny Quest? Does anything come to mind?
It's realistic.
Yeah.
It's like the most realistic adventure cartoon.
Hmm.
So you look at Ghostbusters, they have matching outfits and esoteric uniforms and equipment, and they're fighting, spiritual monsters all the time. Fantastic Four, they're kind of more grounded, but they still have crazy powers and crazy villains. Johnny Quest, I said this on the Blu-ray. They're wearing jeans and t-shirts, and they get in a plane and they fly somewhere you can find on a map, and they have an adventure, you know. And there's something very real about it. And it's something I've talked about elsewhere, not on the Blu-ray, but as a kid, or as a young reader, my first real author I glommed onto was Michael Crichton.
Hmm.
And I read The Andromeda Strain when it was like
Oh.
a big hit book. And I was in my early teens. And Michael Crichton writes the same way that Doug Wildey writes. He looks at popular mechanics, popular science, sees what's 2 to 5 years down the road, like a vertical takeoff and landing jet, or in Crichton's case, cloning, or these things that are theoretical, that aren't total Isaac Asimov fantasies.
Hmm.
And then he builds a story around them. And most of Crichton's novels have this one foot in reality, one foot not. Now, if you think about Jurassic Park, it is the perfect Johnny Quest story. You have the scientist guy. Let's say Hammond is an old friend of Dr. Quest. So the government wants the island vetted. So they send out Dr. Quest, Ray's man, and the two kids to the island, and he explains everything to them, and the cloning and how to bring dinosaurs back to life, and it's all really cool and sciencey. And Dr. Quest can make observations about that. How do you solve the degradation of the DNA chain? And then all hell breaks loose, and you have two kids running from a T-Rex. And both halves of Johnny Quest. And Ray Spannon's a badass, and he's out there with a gun shooting these dinosaurs and things. It's a perfect Johnny Quest story. And if I woke up in a dimension where Johnny Quest never existed, I'd pitch that as the Johnny Quest movie, or at least Jurassic Park never existed. I'd pitch that as a Johnny Quest movie because it's friggin' perfect, you
I
know,
never thought, 35 years I've been on this earth, and never once have I thought Jurassic Park, Johnny Quest.
perfect Johnny Quest story.
Damn.
But his story called Congo, it wasn't a very good movie, but the book
I
is
love the
great,
book. Mm.
great book. It's a friggin' Johnny Quest story because they're in the jungle looking for a high-tech diamond that will be the next super processor. So it's high tech. But they're in the jungle and there are these multi-generational apes trying to kill them, you
Mhm.
know. But they have this gorilla with them that does sign language that can maybe help, and the kind of and and it's really a tremendous Johnny Quest story. Sphere is a great Johnny Quest story. Twister is a great Johnny Quest episode. Even do like, oh, Dr. Quest is doing tornado hunting, one episode or whatever. And it's because Michael Crichton writes the same kind of stories, the same
Mhm.
kind of theoretical speculation stories more than fiction. They're more speculation. You look at the same magazines, same type of magazines. So even as a kid, I was very fascinated with Crichton and recognized the connection right away that they were kind of in the same sandbox. And I love crazy ass science fiction. I read all the Asimov and Clarke and Ellison and all those guys, but boy, there's something about Crichton that really spoke to me as being realistic. Andromeda Strain could even be a Jonny Quest story.
Yeah.
So, anyway, like our guys are touring the wildfire, the silo where they're, and then there's a lockdown and the kids are trapped inside. They thought they were just on a tour of this facility and they get trapped in there and they get involved in this runaway plague. And Johnny's a kid climbing up the ladder with a key in his mouth, is going to
Hmm.
turn off the nuclear reactor. And so it's really easy to turn those stories into Jonny Quest stories. I'm certain I wish Crichton were alive for a lot of reasons because I loved his work, but I am certain he was aware of it. He's aware of that show. He must have liked that show.
Oh
So,
man, it'd be hard not to like that show no matter who you are, man.
yeah.
And if this talk, this chat we just had tells me anything, it's one, we need Steve and Alex on a couple covers for some of these Dynamite books. Two, we need
Whatever it takes, whatever they want, just fucking give it to them. I mean, they might be having trouble negotiating or they want too much money. Just make it friggin' happen.
Lance, I need you to be the middleman between these people. You could make this shit happen. You can move mountains right now if you could.
I've talked to
Um,
both those guys, but I don't have any contact at Dynamite.
I got a couple people, not so much that are Dynamite, but they've been in the business for a little while. I'll reach out to them and then I can always pass along their information to you. Maybe something could happen because this is something that the fan base needs. Fan
The
base really
problem's
needs this.
on, yeah, the problem's on Dynamite's end. Those guys would do it in a heartbeat if the conditions were correct.
Well,
They love
Dynamite,
the material. They love working on it. So
Dynamite, the ball's in your court. Like I said, I'll reach out to a couple people I know, see if we can't rectify this situation. The last thing I figured out while listening to this talk is I think you need one more crack at Jonny Quest, man. I would love to see, even if it was just one more episode, but you got to helm it. I don't think there it would be any better hands than yours to write that.
I cannot argue with you about that. I always wanted to do the story of Johnny's mother. Always wanted to do that story and fill in that little bit um, where we definitively found out what happened to her. And lazy writers in the past have said, "Oh, it was Dr. Zinn." No, it wasn't Dr. Zinn. Whoever was responsible for the death of Johnny's mother died, got killed
Mhm.
as part of her rescue. And there's a real important reason for that. If that had not, if the guy responsible for his mother's, for Mrs. Quest dying was still out there, that would be the premise of the series. Dr. Quest would like, I'm putting my test tubes away and I'm going to get the son of a bitch that killed my wife and the
Yeah.
mother of my son. And that would be the premise of the show. So obviously that was when the show started, that was settled business. Um, and Race Bannon was assigned to the team because of that event. So she was probably kidnapped to blackmail or coerce him out of government secrets. Things went sideways. She was killed, and whoever did it was killed. And to make sure that Johnny isn't kidnapped, so the same thing where he's used as leverage against the dad, they assigned him a bodyguard.
Hmm.
And the bodyguard requirements, because you can kind of put these pieces together. I mean, they say a little bit in the first episode, the Lizardman episode. Since the death of Johnny's mother, we assigned him a bodyguard, blah, 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 to make sure that Johnny isn't fallen into the wrong hands because that could compromise Dr. Quest. They even state up say that. So what I was thinking is Race was uniquely qualified because he has all these James Bondian aspects, but he also has to be a teacher, a tutor. So he actually has to have a teaching credential. So how many James Bond guys could teach a couple of 10-year-olds like math and science and English and all those things. So race kind of fell in this really narrow category of having both those things. So in my mind, he's assigned to this family. He goes, shit, he's a man of action. He doesn't want to be a babysitter. And he discovers very quickly that, oh, I going all over the world. These people are really cool. This guy's like my brother. These are like my two nephews. The dog's great. We fly all over the world. We're fighting monsters and thugs and da da da. I get to visit Jade once in a while or whatever. And he has a goal. That doctor's in. We're going to get that doctor's in some point. So Race reluctantly joins the team and falls in love with the assignment. That's in my head. But then you maybe do that early day, but then you do the flashback to what happened to the mom, kind of thing. So,
I want to see it, and I know there's other people out there that want to see it, Lance. So I'm hoping maybe after the Alex Toth project you're working on now, maybe that's like the next thing.
you know what? I would take the phone call. I have worked for Warner Brothers for about 10 years now. I have nothing but good things to say about working there. As a writer, it was impossible to get any kind of writing work there. All my writing work is from Hanna Barbera. And it was like, even with finished produced scripts, I couldn't get arrested there as a writer. I would say, oh, you're such a good prop guy. Well, you know, I'm a good writer too, I'd like to think. But it was very frustrating. Every show I was on, I also tried to apply as a writer, and they were just like, I wasn't in that
Deadlock.
same improv group that those guys were, whatever the connection is.
Well,
And they have great writers. They have killer writers. But I think I could have got in there. I think I could have got in there and been helpful to Paul Dini and helpful to, Jim Kruger and these guys. Not Jim Kruger, the guy who's kind of running the writing now took over for Alan Burnett. But, also I could have pursued it maybe differently. I had a better relationship with Alan Burnett, and he'd read a script of mine. I could have pushed that button a little harder, probably.
well,
Anyway, you never know.
like Like I said, man, there's plenty of doors out there. I'm hoping one of them will open up for you. Because, like I said, I would love to see Jonny Quest. Maybe it's this year that something gets the ball rolling. I mean, it is the 60th anniversary. Wilder shit has happened, throughout the annuals of animation. So here's to hoping that we can get one more, and then Lance can helm that episode. No better man to do it than Lance. Well, Lance, like I said, it's always a pleasure when I get to talk to you, man. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate being able to just like reach out and say, "Hey, you want to do something on Johnny Quest?" You're like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." Here's 3 episodes that I loved, and we get to sit
Yeah.
here and talk about it, man. So, with that being said, man, that's been Lance. I've been joined. This has been the Cartoon Chronicles podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.
Yeah.